He begged for his life, not with words, but with the silent terror in his eyes. The great Khan had made a promise, and now he was about to keep it. This is the story of Mongol punishments under Genghis Khan. Death without blood. In the 13th century, a storm was gathering on the vast, unforgiving steppes of Central Asia. From the chaos of warring tribes, one man rose to unite them all under a single banner, forging an empire that would stretch from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. His name was Temujin, but the world would come to know him as Genghis Khan. As he carved out his dominion, he understood that conquest was not enough. To hold such a vast territory, he needed something stronger than fear, more absolute than loyalty. He needed order, an ironclad system of rules that would bind every soul, from the lowest soldier to the highest prince. This was the Yassa, the great law of the Mongols. It was not written in ink and parchment for scholars to debate, but etched into the very soul of his people, a code whispered in yurts and enforced on the battlefield. The Yassa governed every aspect of Mongol life: hospitality, marriage, military discipline, and, most importantly, crime and punishment. Among its many edicts, one law stood out, wrapped in a chilling and almost sacred reverence. It was a rule reserved for the elite, for the vanquished kings and the rebellious nobles who dared to challenge the Khan. The Yassa decreed, "No royal blood shall be spilled upon the earth." This was not an act of mercy. It was a spiritual doctrine rooted in the Mongol belief that the soul resided within the blood. To spill the blood of a royal, even an enemy, was to defile the sacred earth and dishonor the eternal blue sky, their highest deity. A chieftain's lineage was seen as a divine connection, and to sever it crudely was to invite cosmic imbalance and misfortune. So, when a prince or a rival Khan was condemned to die, Genghis Khan and his successors were forced to devise methods of execution that were as ingenious as they were horrifying, ensuring the letter of the law was followed, even as the spirit of life was extinguished. The executioners became artisans of death, their tools not the sword or the axe, but whatever was at hand. One of the most infamous methods was death by suffocation. The condemned royal would be tightly wrapped in a heavy felt carpet, the very fabric of Mongol life, until it became their tomb. Guards would then trample the bundle, sometimes with their own feet, sometimes by riding their horses over it, until the life within was crushed and smothered. There was no blood, only the muffled sounds of a struggle that slowly faded into absolute silence. Another favored method was reserved for those who had committed the gravest betrayals. The victim would be laid on their back, a heavy wooden plank placed over their chest. Then, with a cold, ceremonial precision, the Mongol warriors would sit upon the plank to feast and celebrate their victory, the weight of their bodies slowly, agonizingly, crushing the life from the man beneath them. His final sounds would be the cracking of his own bones, drowned out by the victor's revelry. For Jamuka, Genghis Khan's childhood friend, and later his greatest rival, a more honorable death was granted. His back was broken, a swift, brutal snap that paralyzed him instantly, ensuring his blood remained within his body as his life ebbed away. Each method was a unique testament to a grim creativity, designed to fulfill a sacred law while delivering a very profane and terrifying end. The Yassa's reach extended far beyond the royal courts. For the common Mongol, justice was just as swift and often just as final. The law held no tolerance for the sins that weakened a nomadic society. Betrayal was the ultimate crime, for it threatened the unity of the clan, the very foundation of Mongol strength. A warrior who abandoned his comrades in battle was not just a coward, he was a dead man, and so were the 9 men in his unit who failed to retrieve him. theft was met with an equally brutal response. Stealing a horse or a bolt of cloth was not just a loss of property, it was a disruption of the delicate balance of survival on the steppe. Depending on the value of the stolen item, the thief might be cut in half or forced to pay a fine 9 times its worth. If he could not pay, his children were taken instead. Disobedience to the Khan's command, no matter how small, was a direct challenge to his divine authority and was punishable by immediate death. There were no prisons in the Mongol Empire. There was only obedience or the grave. You have to understand, this wasn't just cruelty for its own sake. It was a philosophy. The Mongols believed that fear, when wielded correctly, was a tool of order more effective than any wall or fortress. Mercy was seen as a weakness, a crack in the armor of the empire that enemies would exploit. A single, terrifying example could pacify 1,000 villages. The public execution of a disloyal general would ensure the unwavering obedience of 10,000 soldiers. The brutal dispatch of a captured king sent a clear message to all other rulers. Resistance was not just futile, it was an invitation to an end more dreadful than a simple death in battle. Genghis Khan ruled through a chilling silence. After a city was conquered, the silence that fell was not the peace of surrender, but the stillness of a graveyard. This orchestrated terror was psychological warfare on a grand scale. It broke the will to resist before a battle was even fought, allowing a relatively small Mongol force to control a vast and diverse population. They ruled the world with silence, not mercy. This brutal code of law was the dark engine that powered the Mongol Empire's unparalleled success. The Yassa created a society of absolute discipline. On the march, the Mongol army moved as a single organism, a silent, disciplined horde that could cover astonishing distances with incredible speed. In battle, their coordination was flawless. Born from a lifetime of knowing that the slightest hesitation or act of cowardice would result in a fate worse than any enemy's sword. This iron discipline allowed them to conquer more territory in 25 years than the Roman Empire had in 400. The fear of the Yassa bound them together, turning a loose collection of nomadic tribes into the most efficient and terrifying military machine the world had ever seen. The empire was built on a foundation of conquest, but it was held together by the chilling, ever-present threat of the Khan's law. Every victory, every new territory added to the map, was a testament to the brutal effectiveness of an order maintained by the promise of a bloodless, silent death. It is recorded in the secret history of the Mongols, the oldest surviving Mongol literary work, how Genghis Khan mourned the death of his rival, Jamukha, granting him a royal, bloodless execution as a final sign of respect for their shared past. This wasn't personal hatred, it was the cold, calculated logic of an emperor. The laws of the Yassa were absolute, a force of nature as undeniable as the winter winds of the steppe. The empire he built would eventually fracture its laws, fading into memory. But the echo of its discipline and the ghost of its terrifying justice would haunt the pages of history forever, a stark reminder of how order can be born from terror. But the Yassa held another, stranger law, one that had nothing to do with blood or betrayal. It was a rule about water, and breaking it could get a man killed for simply washing his clothes. What was the purpose of this bizarre law, and why was it as sacred as the Khan's own blood?